Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today on the Blood Bag review, we're looking at Cuphead. Now, this game came out in 2017, and it completely blew up. It was a massive success right out the gate, and obviously, and we're just gonna talk about it and give it a review. And so, Cuphead is a boss rush platformer game that's in the style of a 1930s cartoon. And the entire game, which is probably the main selling point of it, is that it is done completely in hand-drawn 2D animation, like drawn on pencil and paper 2D. It's not like computer 2D. It was drawn in pencil and paper. And it looks phenomenal. The game is very consistent on that aesthetic. And usually when games have an aesthetic they want to go for, they usually, for the most part, they can be consistent with it. But there will be some points in games where it tries to have a consistent style, that style will kind of fall flat in some sections. But with Cuphead, it stays consistent all the way through. And the visuals and animation are very well done. Especially considering this game, well, first off, this game took forever to release. It was, I believe, the first proper knowledge of its existence was back in, I believe, 2010. I could be completely wrong on that, but this game was made by, at first it was made by, two brothers, the Moldenhauer brothers. And they put a lot of their heart and soul into making Cuphead, and there's a lot of stuff that they put a lot to make this game. They sold a lot, had to sell a lot of stuff to get the money to make this game, to hire the staff. To my knowledge, at least, they had to sell a lot to get the money to make this game. I mean, it was worth it in the end, because this is one of the most renowned successes in video games in the last 10 years, so it was very much worth it. Now, let's get into, now that I've already spoken about the phenomenal visuals that this game has that are very consistent, let's talk about the mechanics and gameplay. Again, this is very much supposed to be a rage game, so yeah, it's supposed to be really hard the entire way through, and yeah, you can definitely feel that. And now, if you're not a person who's prone to anger, you're probably not going to get too mad at this game. But if you are, oh boy, then you better strap in. Expect a lot of broken controllers if you're that kind of person. But the game itself, yes, it is very hard. Even right from the get-go, man, it's difficult. It's very difficult. But there's a fine line between being difficult because of via not being good enough, like skill-based, and then there's being difficult from it being broken. And I'll get to stuff like that in a minute, but now the boss fights themselves. Now are very fun for the most part. Again, I'll get to that when I get to it. And each boss is very unique in their own right due to their designs and phases and attacks. While sometimes, I guess, it feels like the attacks can be a bit same-ish. But for the most part, each boss fight and running gun level is very unique to what it's themed around and what the character is. Again, tying into the great visuals, the designs are really good as well. Some of them are very simplistic, like Cuphead Le Grand, him just being a blue blob. But again, they are able to turn it into something very interesting and unique. And a lot of the characters, especially the ones in the overworld, when you're walking around going from boss to boss, it's very a lot of the characters in those areas are very much just household objects that are given bodies. Like there's a dude with a fork for a head, or like a gramophone. Like, to the point where it shouldn't work, yet it does. And it's funny. Now, as for the aforementioned parts that are divided via being difficult from skill to being difficult via being just broken, there are certain boss fights in this game that are, let's just put it, very fucking annoying. And what I mean by that is the platforming bosses. So, obviously you have your normal bosses where you just are on the ground shooting at them. And yeah, you have to move side from side, jump over their attacks and stuff like that. You have your plane fights, which I'll mention them after this. And then you have certain bosses. There's not that many of them in the game, but I believe there's anywhere between 2 to maybe 5 in the game. I can really name 2. I can really only name 2 right now, but there are boss fights that require you to platform your way across platforms to survive and not take damage. The ones that I can name off the top of my head right now are Grim Matchstick and Rumor Honeybottoms. But the problem with these kinds of bosses that I have noticed when playing them is that you can go off screen and enemy attacks can go off screen as well. And you can get hit by that kind of, and you can get hit by the stuff that's not even on the screen. And it's very annoying. And I feel like, I don't know if it was intentional or not. It's not as prominent in the Grim Matchstick fight. Because if you can mainly keep everything on the screen, it's not that prominent in that one. But in the Rumor Honeybottom fight, it's very prominent and very annoying. Especially in the second phase. The first phase with that one's completely fine. But the second and third phase in Rumor Honeybottom, man, it's annoying with the attacks coming from off screen and hitting you. And the fact that like Cuphead himself, can go off screen, it's annoying. It really is. And I guess there is other bosses that are like that, like the Devil, who is the final boss, and Glumstone the Giant from the DLC, who, by the way, the DLC will get its own separate review. I just thought I'd bring up Glumstone in the whole platforming fights, but again, he'll be saved for the DLC. But I just thought I'd quickly mention the platforming fights are very annoying, and I don't know if they're broken, but it's very hard when getting hit by shit that's not even on the screen. Now, let's move on to the plane fights. They're fine. Some of them are very annoying. Some of them are very not. An example of a plane fight that's not that difficult or just fine would probably be, if I can draw one, would probably be Jimmy the Great. He's not, like, again, he's fine. But then you have stuff like Dr. Call's Robot. Dr. Call's Robot has a very big problem that, again, I'm going to mention here now. One massive problem with Cuphead, and this is the most glaring issue with the game, it's an amazing game, but this is the most glaring issue with the game, is that there are certain parts in this game where there is so much stuff on the screen, making it nearly impossible to focus on Cuphead or what you're really trying to do. And a lot of that has to do with, I know I was praising this game for its art style and its amazing animation, but due to the fact that there's really not much to, I guess, differ the stuff you're supposed to be dodging and, like, Cuphead himself or the shots, there's really not much to differ. Unless you're really keen-eyed, there's not really much that differs it. And there are certain fights and parts in this game where there's just so much stuff on the screen, making it nearly impossible to focus. But there are other parts where it's really easy to focus. It really depends on how well and how good you are at focusing. And I don't know if I really should hold the game accountable for that being an issue or not, but I just thought I'd bring that up. Now, let's get into the story, the meat of Cuphead. So, the game obviously follows Cuphead and his brother Mugman, who one day they go to the devil's casino in hell, and they accidentally gamble their souls away. And so the devil is like, I'll give you your souls back if you beat up these assholes who didn't pay me or something. Well, they're debtors, so obviously the entire game is you have to go through each one of these boss fights, beat them up, grab soul contracts, which is just stealing their soul pretty much, and then you have to go back to the devil to give him those contracts so you become free. Obviously there's a choice at the end of whether or not to give him the contracts or to fight him. And obviously hilarity and hijinks and anger ensues. And that is just basically the story. There's not much to the story. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of, I don't know if it's intentional, but I feel like the developers knew that the story probably wasn't going to be the main focus of the game, because when playing, you kind of forget that the story, about the story, or at least I kind of did when I was playing. So, yeah. And I don't hold that as an issue. That's just, either that's just shitty memory, or the story is so minimal you don't really care about it. But again, I don't really hold that as a criticism. I'm just mentioning it because I have to mention the story. Yeah, but overall, Cuphead is a very well-made game, very pretty game. It has amazing animation, backgrounds. It has great gameplay, besides those very, very shitty platforming fights. And the whole getting confused on what you're supposed to be looking at. And I forgot to mention the music in this game. S-rank music, man. It's a great soundtrack. I do listen to it quite a bit. It's a great soundtrack, and very jazzy, very 30s, because again, it takes place in the 30s. It's very good. Very good soundtrack. One of my all-time favorite soundtracks from, hell, probably anything. But yeah, and putting Cuphead into the old blood bag here, I'm going to give it a solid 95%. Not a perfect 100, because there are some issues with focusing, and the platforming fights are really something else to behold. But again, the most glaring issue is that it's very difficult to focus on what you're trying to look at, and what you should be, and what you should be dodging. Is very difficult to focus on multiple things at once, unless you're just super good at it. I'm clearly not. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed my review of Cuphead. I will be reviewing the Delicious Last Course separately, and the show as well. The DLC review, that will probably be soon, like maybe within the next 5 days. The show review, that will happen maybe in the next week or so. And if it doesn't happen within those time frames, don't get mad at me. I am a very, very, I'm not a busy person. I have to get to so much at once, man. So don't get mad at me if it doesn't happen on the time frame I say it does. So anyway, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you like my content, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.